All right, thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction. I was just waiting for the record to start. Let me get this in slideshow mode. So you should be seeing my screen now and hopefully me. My name is...
Not yet.
Okay.
Oh, wait, hold it. No, that's because I had you pinned. Sorry. Go ahead and share your screen again.
Okay. Let me do this one more time. Sorry. Oh, there it is. Hold on. Okay.
Nice.
Now I'm sharing my screen. Great. Thank you so much for having me, everyone, and I'm so glad to be presenting to you today. And again, my name is Noah Newman, and I'm with the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network, otherwise known as COCORAS, which is a slightly easier way to say it, but it's still a funny acronym. As I was introduced, I was thinking we are a citizen science project, meaning that anyone, anywhere can join this. These days, a lot of people are starting to call us community science or community-based science to make sure that we're being inclusive to everyone, not just what maybe the word citizen implies. So really anyone in the community can do this, and I'll tell the teachers on board that are part of this with your third graders, this is actually an awesome project to do with your third grade class. This meets standards for all sorts of things between science and math and geography, and you can even incorporate some art in there as well. So this is a great project for third graders, but it's also a great project for anyone that has an interest in the weather. So, COCORAS is a grassroots project. We are nonprofit, and like I mentioned, we are based with community or volunteers from all ages and backgrounds, and all you're doing is measuring precipitation from your backyard or school, or some people do this at their work as well, at their place of business. So once you get trained, and it's very easy, I'm going to actually show you how to do it just in this presentation today, so you'll be fully trained and certified and ready to go after watching this presentation. You get your rain gauge, you set it up in a location that is easy but still open, and just open for the precipitation to fall in it. And then here's a image of our data entry page where you can enter your data, and nowadays you can even do that through a smartphone. We've got an app that is free that you can use a smartphone to enter your data. And once you do, your data are available nearly in real time. Immediately, you can go to the map and look at not only how much, confirming how much you reported, but you can see how much your neighbors reported as well. And you can look at this in list format, and also in national maps. And to let you know, just in the last month, we just released our brand new map, and this is fully interactive where you can zoom in and pan around, and you can map multiple days at a time, and it's a fascinating thing to see. The whole purpose of our project is because of a disastrous flood that occurred in 1997 in Fort Collins, Colorado, and that's where I'm based right now. We had a flood that occurred, and across the town, this looks like a topographic map, but it's actually a precipitation map where 14.5 inches fell on the west side of town, and you can see where the airport is on the east side of town. This is where the official rain gauge was, and they only received 2 inches. And I say only 2 inches, but you all in New Mexico, similar to me in Colorado, 2 inches is a lot of rain. So it was a big deal. But what they didn't realize was that nearly a whole year's worth of rain was falling on the west side of town, and that created a flash flood and the person that started this, the state climatologist at the time, realized, gosh, if people would have been able to notify the National Weather Service about the rain that was falling on the west side of town, they could have issued a flash flood alert. And unfortunately, with this, that they didn't have that information, and we lost lives and destruction of property that really potentially could have been avoided had they known it was coming. So people started saying, hey, I would set up a rain gauge in my backyard. And gosh, there's this internet thing going on. We could submit our data to you online. And now, 20 some years later, we are in all 50 states. We're also in Canada, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas. We've got new countries knocking on our door all the time. So the real problem, as I described it with that flood, but we've all seen this every day. You can look out the window and watch it rain across the street or down the way, but it's not raining on you. Rainfall is so variable that we need more people to submit how much they have in order to help out the National Weather Service. Now, who uses our data? It's a whole bunch of different people, and it really starts out at the top with the National Weather Service, who utilize the data for real-time warnings, but also for research. You can see all sorts of people that use this. City managers will use it. And in New Mexico specifically, your state climatologist uses the data for climate research. So I'm going to go over a little bit of training with everyone, and then at the end of after about 10 or so more minutes, then there'll be time for some questions and answers, and you'll be able to ask me anything that you need to know about participating in the project. So the first part about the project is that everyone is required to use the exact same rain gauge. We need to be comparing apples to apples. And what we've learned over the years is that those automated gauges that you can mount on the roof of your school or the roof of your house, those are fun, but they're not as accurate as the National Weather Service really needs the data to be. The best instrument actually requires eyeballs. It requires a human being to look at it, take this thing out, empty it, and report it online. And so everyone uses this rain gauge. Now, at the end, we're going to talk about how you guys on this live presentation can be eligible for what normally costs $40 for this. You can be eligible for one for just $10, basically the cost of shipping it to you. So that's a bonus for you guys attending live today. And same with the schools. We can get one for your school just for the cost of shipping, and you can set it up at the school once you guys are back in person. Back in the school. So the best thing to do is to set it up in a wide open spot, but I know that's not convenient in a lot of people's backyards. You've got trees, you've got your house, you've got whatever it might be. So we really just say, do your best. If your rain gauge can see the sky, you're doing something right. Now, the better you can get away from trees and buildings and the more out in the open, the better. But we understand that there's never really a perfect site, so we use the mantra to do your best. The worst places to put your gauge are to keeping it in the box, which is it makes me cringe when I see this, but we'll sometimes give out a gauge to someone, and a year later, they never took it out of the box. So get it out, and you can start measuring. Even in the dry climate of New Mexico, your zeros are valuable too. And so I'll talk about that in a second. You'll want to watch out for sprinklers and pets and vandalism, things like that. And in this case, some kids are attacking it with squirt guns. So you'll want to be aware of where you're placing it, but you want to do your best. Here's a couple of ideas. If you're not able to dig a hole, for instance, and mount a post in the ground, you can potentially buy a $3 fence post at your local hardware store. You could potentially just put it on the ground in a Christmas tree holder. And here in this case, you can see that they didn't bury it in the ground. They've used 4 other 4x4s or 2x4s you can use to secure your mount that way. So there's other ways to mount it besides digging a hole and pouring concrete. The ways to sign up, you just go to our website, cocoraz.org. You click on the upper right corner and you fill out the information. For schools, I would recommend you use your school name and then your teacher email address. But that's the basic thing to know as a school is to, but otherwise you'll just fill out the form and we will geolocate your station. We'll issue you a login and password and you'll be good to go. We do not, of course, share or sell or do anything with your information other than we do share your information with the National Weather Service. So if you submitted a, 6.5-inch report and it's raining cats and dogs and they want to know a little bit more, they would have access to your email address to be able to contact you. So it is shared for safety and with the official National Weather Service, but your private information is kept private. Reading your rain gauge. So this thing is designed to hold actually over 11 inches of rainfall. And in Colorado or New Mexico, in your case, that's certainly something that's not going to happen in a 24-hour amount, or at least hopefully. But what I'm going to explain to you here is that you've got a funnel and you've got an outer tube and you've got an inner tube. And so I'm going to show how these all work together to measure rainfall with accuracy to the nearest 100th of an inch. And so here shows the same things that I was holding up in the camera. And this inner tube allows us to measure to the nearest 100th of an inch. And so what's going on here is that the opening of the funnel and where it forces it into the inner tube are a mathematical equation that basically exaggerates the amount of water so we can actually see the graduation all the way up to 1 inch. And I'll show you here in the next slide where you can see that 1 inch of water in that outer cylinder, if I poured it into the inner tube, it goes all the way to 1 inch. And so I will briefly, let me see if I can, I think if you're watching my video, you still have my slide up, but you'll see that I've got the rain gauge and I'm just going to pour just a little bit of water in here. And if I were to, yes.
Why don't you stop sharing for a second so that we
Okay.
can, there you go. And now go ahead and pin Noah's video.
So I've poured just a small amount of water into this outer cylinder. And this would be, like let's say you could, for instance, have a coffee can out in your backyard and to measure rainfall. If it rained this much and you tried sticking a ruler into it, you would maybe see that it's less than 1/2 of an inch. You could maybe get to the 1/10 of an inch. You could say maybe that's a couple of 1/10ths of an inch, but that's not being as accurate as we want to be. We want to be accurate to the 100th of an inch. So if I put the funnel over my inner tube and I pour it in, it kind of makes like a little tornado. Ooh, I was fairly good of an eyeball guess, but now I can see here that it comes up to 29 hundredths, almost 3/10ths of an inch. So that is how we do the measurements here, is through that way. Now, the cool part about the gauge is that it all comes put together like this. So as it's raining, that first inch gets forced into this inner tube, and you can see right there how much it's rained right looking at the inner tube. The follow-up question, though, of course, is, well, what happens if it rains more than an inch? And so hopefully I have enough rain in my, there it goes. And what's happening there? It's overflowing. So the way that we measure when it rains more than an inch, and this does happen in New Mexico every once in a while, you do get a deluge. But what you do is you remove your inner tube. I give it a little shake. And so now I take a measurement and I say, oh, it's at 1 inch, or maybe 99 hundredths if I'm looking closer, or maybe if I shook out a little bit more. And so I write that down and I say I've got 99 hundredths. And I pour that out. And now I can take the remaining part, whatever else is left in this outer cylinder, I pour back in here. I measure the rest. Looks like I've got 13, maybe 14 hundredths. And so I add 14 with 99 and I end up with a grand total of 1.13 inches. And so that would be my entry for that rainstorm, would be 1.13. That's basically it. That's how to do it. You guys are now trained, certified to the same degree as a NASA astronaut when it comes to measuring precipitation to the hundredth of an inch. I want to quickly go over, though, some of the most common reports that you get. And oops, I need to start sharing again. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Back on board. Can see my screen?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So now I want to go over a couple of the most common reports that you get. Obviously, in the desert Southwest that we live in, your most common report each and every day is nothing, zero. But as a scientist, that is good data. We want to know if it rained or if it did not rain. And we can't just assume that if you didn't report, it was a zero. So we want you to log on a consistent basis. Make it a habit, whether it's 7 a.m. every morning or 12 o'clock noon every morning. Some people do it at 11:59 right before midnight every night to keep it through the calendar day. So whatever time you decide, you want to check your gauge and submit whatever you have, whether it's zero or more. Now, the next most common is a trace, and that's where, yes, you watched it rain. You saw raindrops fall at your house or at your school. It even maybe wet the pavement, but you go to your gauge the next morning and you look and there's just nothing in there. It was not enough to go up to that first hundredth of an inch. And if it's not enough to be a hundredth, but you know that it rained, you can submit a trace. And that is actually really helpful to scientists too, because some of them are looking at radar and they might be looking at their screen and they see what looks like a rainstorm. But what we know in the dry desert is that rain might fall, but then it doesn't ever reach the ground. It evaporates before it hits the ground. And to a scientist looking at the radar, they see the rainfall and they don't know if it hit the ground or not. So you can be on the ground to verify, yes, I got a trace. And that really helps out the scientists there. So I was being brief and not quite looking closely at my inner tube, but what you want to be careful of is that, especially when you get real rainfall and there's a little bit of dirt and grime in your inner tube, you'll get what's called the meniscus. And it's just basically what happens is that the properties of water cause it to stick to the outsides of the inner tube, and gravity pulls the middle part of it down. And the idea is that you always want to measure from the bottom of the meniscus. So here we would not say that it's 41 hundredths. We would actually say that it's 41 hundredths, 0.40 here, because it's really closer to this line than it is where it looks like it could be higher up. We're measuring from the bottom of the meniscus. So we don't want to round, and when I say round, I mean in that last case, it was between 39 and 40, and so, in those sort of cases, you can round to the nearest hundredth of an inch. But what we're talking about here is that we don't want you rounding up to the next 5 hundredths, or if you had 95 hundredths, we don't want you telling us that you had an inch. We want you telling us that you had 95 hundredths. So we want you to be accurate as possible when you're submitting these reports. I mentioned already, we want to be consistent. The best time to report your data, or actually, I should be more accurate, the best time to read your gauge is in the morning time, around 7 a.m. But in that way, your data can be on the maps and be compared to everyone else in the project that's reporting in the morning. You can submit your data anytime. So if I read my gauge this morning at 7 a.m. and I forgot to enter my data today and it's already past noon, that's fine. I can still enter my data and I can still say I read my gauge at 7 a.m. and I'll show you that data entry page next. So I already showed you how to measure more than an inch. And here's the data entry page. Once you log in, it'll go right to your data entry page, and it'll default to the current day. This is a very old slide. I created this slide several years ago, but it'll default to today's date. It'll default to your current time that you set when you registered with us. And you can change any of these, so you can backfill data, or you can, maybe you weren't able to look at your gauge until 8 a.m. this morning, so you can change that as well. But then you enter your amount, you hit submit, and you've done it. You've helped out scientists. It took you less than a minute, and you can help out anytime. You do not have to do it every day, but it really helps if you do. So I showed you that already. It's also very helpful if you add some notes. And teachers, if here at this point, I would say, the most successful model is to assign 2 students a day to go out and check the gauge and come back. But you can also ask them to collect a couple of other observation notes, whether there were clouds in the sky. They can even bring out a cloud chart and try to match up what types of clouds they see. A lot of people use this as their weather diary. So you can, if you do have an automated station and you've got your highs and lows of the day, you want to submit that so you can look at it later. These are all great things to do. Also, though, if you had some rain and you want to tell a story, you want to say, hey, my backyard got flooded from this event, this is a great place to add those notes as well. And you can view all of your data, and you can edit it if you need to. If you made a mistake, you can do that as well. And there's other types of reports that you can enter. The last type of report that I'll mention is the multi-day, because if you are gone, for instance, at a school, you're not there on the weekends, you can come in on a Monday and check your gauge and report what you found over the weekend. Or if you're gone for vacation, you can set it up and say, hey, I was gone for this last week, and here's how much I found in my gauge when I returned. We do also hail. If it hails, you can submit a hail report. We also do snow. If it snows, you can measure the snow. I'm not going to go into the details because that's more training, and my cat is welcoming us as well. So if she's getting on the camera, sorry about it. So what else? Besides contributing to science, you have opportunities to reach out to scientists at the National Weather Service, climatologists. For instance, your state climatologist, Dave Dubois, is the state leader for Cocoras in New Mexico, and so you've got access to scientists when you're part of Cocoras. And through social networking and meeting friends who also like measuring precipitation, you can definitely do other things to get involved. Here's a science fest where we had kids shooting squirt guns as a little race to fill up their gauge the fastest. And I'll also mention we've had teachers do things with art, where you can encourage the kids to write a poem about the rainfall, or we can take our used hail pads, the ones that have been dented with hail, and frame them up and make hail art. So the 5 easy steps: you go to our website, you join, you get a rain gauge, and I guess I'll talk about that right now, because you get, or no,
do you have a
yep,
question?
sure.
Jennifer is wondering, do students have access to the data? So, for example, if they're doing a science fair project, it's like without identity to that data.
Absolutely. Yep. The data are open to anyone, but the only thing that you see when you're looking at the data is a unique station identifier. So my station ID is COLR 832, and I just made up a number, but for instance, nobody knows that that's tied to Noah Newman at my specific address and all that. So you can look at the data, but you aren't able to see any names or email addresses that tie that to the data. And the same involved, I mean, at very high levels, we have researchers that tap into our data, and they just get they're just looking on maps, and they're not caring about who does what. So yes, the data are, and you don't even have to be registered. Even if you are not part of CocoRa's, you can go to our website and you can look at the data and access it all you want, and it is all for free. So great question. I was going to mention about obtaining the rain gauge at the $10 cost. So basically, I will encourage you to send me an email and mention that you attended the New Mexico Fiesta presentation and that you're interested in getting a rain gauge, and I will work with you from there to get it to you. We've got all the training resources online, but you just attended a training session, so you're all set. And there are, of course, more things that you can find on our website and videos and PowerPoints and any way that you want to learn more about how to measure precipitation. We've got you covered. So I think that is basically it. I do end all of my presentations to say we are cuckoo for CocoRa's, and I would be happy to take any more questions that are that anyone has.
And could you share your email with us?
Yes. Oops, and I just stopped sharing, but it's Noah, Noah, at cocorahs.org. CocorahS.org. And maybe I can share my screen one more time and show my email address as well. So let me get that back to the previous slide. Noah at cocorahs.org.
Perfect. And then one of Jennifer's students, all of her students are watching right now, are asking how many people are collecting data for you in New Mexico?
Ooh, that's a really good question. We have, I don't, just off the top of my head, okay, so actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you live to our website, and we're going to be able to look at this together. And I'm going to actually just go to view data, and we're going to look at a quick summary of New Mexico for this month, and we will see at least how many people have been reporting. So this is not necessarily how many people throughout time have ever signed up in New Mexico, but we can see that we're getting anywhere in the order of up to 600. Look at this, almost 700 reports last week on the 9th when you guys had quite a bit of rain there fall. That was the average amount for all those 674 people was nearly a half an inch of rain. So, or I'm sorry, 693 people. So yeah, but you can see here on a dry day when there was just nothing but zeros, look, this is fantastic. This is what makes my heart warm, is that there were 400 people that checked their gauge, logged into our website just to tell us that they got nothing. That is beautiful. That really is valuable data that shows us that you're dedicated, that you're going out of your way to tell us very interesting information to us, but is obviously not so much information, interesting information to you. Yeah, it didn't rain again. It's nothing new, but zeros are gold to the folks that use the data, especially the drought scientists. So that I hope that answers your question there. But yeah, we're always looking for more. I can also just show you, I actually had pre-pulled this up. This is New Mexico for the month of August. So this was an accumulated amounts for the entire month of August. And if I zoomed into maybe Los Alamos area, or I'm sorry, Las Cruces area, we can see all the different people that reported throughout the month and their totals throughout the entire month. So this is a fun thing to do, and you can see some people got up over an inch, and north of town, not even a half of an inch. So this is, again, data like this to scientists like me, this is gold, and this is just one example of one map that I just pulled up um, for just last month. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, we got another student that's wondering, well, how do I know if it's going to rain?
Oh, well, that's a good question. Um, that's less in my wheelhouse and more with the National Weather Service. So I always encourage people to go to weather.gov and then search for their location where they live to learn how much it might rain or to see the warnings that might be coming their way. But our we're more into tracking what already happened. We're not in the business of trying to predict what is going to happen. We want to know how much it rained in your backyard versus how much it rained in your neighbor's backyard, because that's the fascinating thing to us, is how much it rains in different locations from one block to the next. Great question.
And then how does the National Weather Service know whether or not it's going to rain?
Oh, well, they have all sorts of fancy radars and satellites and ways that they see. I can maybe pull up the radar right here, and you can see they've compiled all the radar for all of the country into one big picture where they're watching the radar from outer, or I mean, this is from the ground, but then they also have satellites that look at it from outer space. And the third piece of the puzzle are people on the ground. And so they can look from outer space, they can look from radars that are beaming out from from their radars, but the real thing is people with rain gauges on the ground to verify how much these instruments thought that was actually happening. So great questions.
Um, Somebody's wondering, how do you get into this type of job?
Oh, great question. Um, it's just for me, this has actually been, I am so lucky because I was able to turn basically what was a hobby into a career. I've always kind of been a sciencey person, and at first it was with astronomy, where I always enjoyed looking up at the stars. And then it kind of dawned on me that, you know what, I kind of like looking up all the time. I'm looking at these clouds. I'm always like, pointing, grabbing my friends and saying, look at that cool cloud. And what happened was is I started volunteering at a science museum where I could show people things that I liked to see. And from working at the science museum to then getting recruited to work for the project like Kokoraz, that's how I actually fell into my career. So I did not follow the traditional path of getting a PhD in meteorology. I am more of the education and outreach type of person where I'm just my passion is sharing my knowledge with others, and so I get to do that with my job here. So yeah, my volunteering at the Science Museum turned into my job here at Kokoraz. Great question.
And that's such an important point. You don't need necessarily, as a scientist, you don't need necessarily higher education. There's different pathways to get into your passion. Sarah is asking how many people use this tool in total.
Oh goodness. Um, Besides the 20,000 people that have rain gauges and submit their data, who most of them use these tools, they look at our maps and they're becoming their own scientists. When we're looking at these maps, we're scientists ourselves because we're analyzing the data. But when it comes to the professionals that call us up and say, "Hey, can we use your data for our research?" Um, we have we have run out of fingers to count. Our data are used by so many that they end up in products that you see, for instance, on the National Weather Service page. So if I went to past weather and I wanted to see the precipitation from last week on the national map, it turns out that they're using our data along with others' data too. So they take in our data, they take in other data, and they fuse it all into their products. And so many times people are using our data and they don't even know it. So it's gotten to the point with our network, it's been so strong and there's so many people that the data are being used every day, every hour by professionals all over the world.
Jennifer's class is just going to town. Jennifer, do you want to jump in and ask these questions, or?
Sure. Believe it or not, my kids are asking a lot of questions. One of them said, how do you get so good at this? Like, how do you get good at what you're doing? Because they're impressed.
Thank you so much. I've had a lot of practice, and I've even had to be on live TV a couple of times too, where they put me on the Weather Channel. And so thanks to those past experiences, I guess I've gotten some good practice at being able to present to you guys. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sure. And then, do you want me to ask the other one, Allison?
Sure.
The other question is, who had the most rainfall yesterday in the country, according to your data?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So I'm going to click on the map and I'm going to go to yesterday, and immediately we can zoom towards these red dots where they were in Florida. And wow, over 5 inches of rain, 6 inches of rain, 8 inches of rain. Holy cow. And so if I click on this dot, I'm going to cross my fingers that the person who submitted it told us, nope, they did not submit any details at all. If it rained 8 inches at my house, I would write a book in my observation notes as far as what happened and how crazy of an event that was. But look at this. Look at that. Just 1 inch, just a few miles away from where people were getting 4, 6, 8 inches. Here, this person wrote windy, some thunderstorms, still raining. And that's the funny part. In Florida, maybe 5 inches is just another Tuesday. So that was fun. Great question. That was cool. This is a lot of what we do, and there we are. We're scientists. We just analyze some data right there.
Can I ask one more of you?
Yeah.
They keep coming in. They're sending them to me through chat. So one of the questions is, and remember, these are like 8-year-olds. What if your rain gauge falls over? What do they do?
That's a great.
That is a great question, and I'll tell you what, it happens. And so what do? You report NA. And so if I were on my data page, I would type in, and it says here NA, enter NA for unknown. And so this actually happened to me one time. It was a cold morning and there was frost on my deck, and because I've got fences, I was admittedly just in my underwear, but I tiptoed out to grab my gauge and I took it off and I tiptoed back and I slipped and fell and my rain gauge went flying and I have no idea how much was in there. And I was bruised and embarrassed and had to enter NA for unknown in my data entry page that day. And I wrote, "Oh, I slipped and fell, and I dropped my gauge," and so it was disappointing for sure. Yeah, great questions.
What other questions? Ishmael says you are doing great work.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, Ishmael, I hope you guys can set up a gauge at your school. I don't know if you're doing in person yet, but once you get back to your school, we'll get your teacher a rain gauge, and you guys as a class can submit data and help us and you guys can be scientists, but you can help us, the scientists, as well.
Awesome. And Jennifer says they've already got a plan.
All right. Well, that's great. I've stopped sharing now. So I don't know if we're starting to possibly run out of time, and I don't want to out Google video anyone.
So, huge shout out to our teachers out there. Let's see here. We have Jennifer. We've got Johnny. That they're teachers right now. Their classes are participating right now. Huge shout out to everything that you're doing during this time. We just so appreciate everything that you're doing. And also to our students, we've got a couple of students here today that are here because our teachers suggested they come. So huge shout out to you all for just hanging out there and enjoying the Science Fiesta. Any other questions for Noah before we wrap this up?
Thank you guys so much. And to the teachers, I echo what Allison said. Teachers, you all are such heroes. And then we have a pandemic, and oh my gosh, we've all now hopefully even more people understand how important you guys are to what you do. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
I am writing in the chat box the feedback form here. We're doing daily drawings for people that submit feedback. It's so important for us, especially during this virtual time, to learn what's working and what we can do better and what we can adapt for next year. Again, the New Mexico Science Fiesta happens every year, so keep looking for it. Go to explore.us program Science Fiesta. Join us throughout the week. If you are on social media, please feel free to tag us. Tell us how much you're enjoying this. And we hope to see you not just throughout the week, but also Saturday for the Explosive Science Fiesta Expo. Go to our website to find out how to join us on that. That'll be a YouTube live event. Again, huge shout out to our sponsors, AFRL, Fidelity, New Mexico, EPSCoR, HP, Acoma, Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Mexico, Facebook, and Sandia National Laboratories. And huge shout out to you all for just being curious and participating. We really appreciate you all. And let's go ahead and unmute ourselves and just say a huge thank you to Noah out loud.
Thank you, Noah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Allison, thank you.
All right. Very much appreciated. And you are so welcome.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll look forward to anything else you need, and I'll look forward to maybe participating in the future again.